Hi and welcome to STEM Live. I'm Alan Thompson and I'm here at the most northerly part of the British Isles, the Shetland Islands. They're absolutely beautiful, and as I look over to my left I can see where we're heading. We're heading to Saxavord Spaceport. It's the UK's newest spaceport where the scientists there are preparing to send things into space on rockets. Now I know you're from all over the world today. We've got over 100,000 children who are joining us right now on this lesson. So we want to hear from you too. We want you to use the Twitter hashtag STEMLive, and also we'd like you to use Slido, which is a really cool way of you interacting with us, answering some questions and even asking a few of your own. Forget to the side of the screen, you can see the Slido box where you can ask questions and respond to the questions we ask you. And down below, there's the downloadable resources for you to use in your classroom. We're pulling into the Saxavord Spaceport now. We're going to go to headquarters first, where we're going to meet our first special guest of the day. And I can tell you now, I happen to know he is training to be an astronaut too. Hey.
Hey, good to see you again.
Good to see you again. Here we
Welcome.
are.
Yeah, welcome. So this is our headquarters. I wanted to bring you in here real quick, just to show you around.
Yeah, great.
But yeah.
Good to see you
welcome
again.
Back.
Yeah.
Have to get you some proper warm gear.
I know, I'm not dressed properly for this, am I? Oh, there we go. Saxavord UK Spaceport headquarters.
Yeah.
Here we are, everyone. We've arrived. And some of you from yesterday will remember Mason, who is a trainee astronaut and was in our Q&A yesterday with Helen Sharman. But today has got a different hat on. He's going to tell us all about his work here at the spaceport. So here we are at headquarters.
Welcome.
Should we go on in?
Yeah, welcome.
Freezing.
Get warm.
Oh, wow.
All right, so
Here
this is our main headquarters. Unfortunately, you know, it's kind of just office-y, and this is kind of where all the admin stuff happens. So I'm going to show you some really cool stuff here in a little bit.
Well, this is pretty cool.
Yeah, I wanted to start.
Look at
So I know a lot of people are thinking, hey, you're coming all the way up to Shetland, let's see some rockets. Well, we're still under construction, so the rockets aren't quite there yet. But I've got some really cool examples. Like some kids built this just a couple of years ago when we first said, hey, we're going to start launching rockets from here. And then, you know, as time goes on, we'll eventually actually have the rockets. Later, I'll show you the launch pad. So.
Amazing. Well, we did ask the children to think about what we might find in a tour of a spaceport, and some people did put rockets, and some people said satellites.
And satellites. Oh, yeah.
No satellites yet?
No satellites yet.
What's that?
What's this? Well, no, that's a Lego International Space Station.
Oh, is that what it is? I saw it when I walked in. I was like, oh, we've actually got a satellite, but it's not a satellite.
But
it's a space station.
Can
we see it?
Yeah, and in all fairness, if you want to think about satellites, and we'll get into this later, is that's probably about as big, if not smaller, that most of the satellites will be launching from here. So even though that's not a satellite, that's a good representation about the size of what's going to be launched here from Shetland.
Right, okay. When I walked in, I saw that. I thought it was a satellite, but there we go. Yeah. And anyone who likes Lego, okay, that's made of Lego as well. Right, so where are we going next?
Yeah, so we're going to go to the main operations building. That's where my office is, and then all the fun magic stuff happens. So we'll get away from all this boring
admin and offices. Nobody wants to see that. So. Right, okay, great. Please. Thank you. After you.
That awkward moment of who goes first. All right, now we're going to just head off this way down to the office.
Great. It's really beautiful up here, isn't it?
Oh yeah, it always got me when I moved up here that there's no trees.
Oh yeah.
But
why are there no trees?
That goes way back to when people first came to Shetland. They cut down all the trees for building and then firewood, and then now it's because of like the sheep, because there's sheep everywhere. They eat all the scrubs, and there's just never a chance for trees to naturally grow up here.
So how long have you been here? Because that's not a local accent. That's not a local accent.
So I've been up here a little over a year. Been with Saxavord for about a year and a half, but originally come from the States, from Oklahoma.
Right.
But I've been in Scotland 12 years now. Did my PhD at Edinburgh University, fell in love, and just never left.
Amazing. So, yeah. Fell in love with the country or person?
Yes, everything.
Everything. So tell us about your work here. What do you do up here?
Yeah, so I'm in charge of everything: education, innovation, skills, and then also training for like crewed space flight. So what that means is I get to go out into schools and inspire people and inspire especially kids. I love working with kids on living, working, and playing in space.
Okay, why do you think that's so important? Why is there a whole role in your role to actually go and talk to children about space?
Yeah, we're getting into this new space now, and it's all about where humanity's going, and it's about going together. And for us here at Saxavord, it's making that tangible, because you could have come in, set up a facility, launched rockets, and that's it. But why not use that as an education platform for the future? Because future jobs and future careers and future of what we are as humans are going to be going, living, working, and playing in space. So let's be a part of that going forward. And that was a real gap that we saw when we started Saxavord, that the industry's not really doing. So we wanted to be a leader in that area.
And why do you think it's so important to children today to be aware of that?
Yeah, it's one of those that, like, for me growing up, I never thought space was a possibility, but now if you can dream it, you can do it type of things. And like the jobs of tomorrow are going to be in space. So whether you want to be a fashion designer, they're going to need clothing on the moon. If you want to be a farmer, a crofter, or a plumber, we're going to need all of those as we start living in space, permanently staying in space, then going on beyond our own planet. So
amazing.
Yeah. Anyway, we're at the operations building here, okay. And would love to take you in and show you around.
Mission control.
Mission control.
Here we go.
Few
After
things.
you, lead the way. Thank you.
Please.
Thank you.
No problem. And we're just going to go into the left here, and I'm going to show you our cool event space that we have, that we are going to eventually live stream launches from, and then we also host music venues here in the community to come in. So just last week we had over 80 over 65-year-olds come in here for an event that we did a presentation on what we're doing, and then we also took people up to site to show them around and just had a...
I'm getting the sense that Saxavord's really looking at its position in the community, in the towns and the villages and the schools and places around the Shetlands. Is that right?
Yeah, community for us is really important, and we want to be at the center of that, but we want to be an active member that works with the community, as opposed to just coming in, kind of like I mentioned about, we could just come in, shut the doors, launch rockets. We want to make sure that we're part of the lifeblood of what this community is, but also the future, because it's important. So we want the local kids, the kids that are from the highlands and islands and the rural communities, to know that there's jobs here that they can go off to school and then come back to.
And also with your live streaming, obviously we're live streaming today all over the world, but you're going to be live streaming launches, so people who are watching today could actually watch your launches here.
Exactly. So we'll have the live streams of the launches. We also do a weekly music set where local artists come out and they stream on our Facebook Live every Sunday. And then various stuff. We'll look at dances and then host bands up here eventually. So
lots of arts as well around the work you're doing.
Exactly. I mean, I know we're talking about STEM today, but for us it's also about STEAM and the importance of arts and art and space, because, you know, we can talk about the engineering, we can talk about the math and science and everything, but if you don't have the creativity that goes there with as well, we're not going to be able to go further. Or as like one of my friends, Dr. Sion Proctor, always said, you know, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And that's where we are right now, and we want to make sure that we're all going together.
Amazing. I can't take my eyes off it.
Yeah.
I keep seeing this rocket in front of me. What is this? It says NASA on it. Have NASA been?
NASA hasn't been yet, but so we had the Highlands show, which is where all the local crofters, our farmers, come out and show their livestock, and we had a rocket competition, and we thought, hey, we might have like some small rockets and whatnot, and one family made this and showed up.
Wow.
And so it's really cool. You can actually get in here.
You're joking.
And climb in.
It's got buttons and everything. Can I go in?
Go for it. Be my guest. Come on, check this out.
I'm too big. Oh no, I'm in. There we go.
So we've
got 100,000 people in here from all over the world with me. That's so cool. Look at this. I'm ready for liftoff. This is amazing. It's been made out of a microwave. This just shows how creative some people are. We've got bits of microwave in here.
Oven.
We've got an oven. We've got that's the oven. Then we've got the dishwasher down below. But wow, this is fabulous.
What's really cool about this is a lot of kind of like the circuitry that you would find. So when I was doing training in Arizona back in November, we were using similar switchboards for
Really?
fire suppression or emergency egress out of a vehicle.
And that was on rockets that
And that
actually
was-
could go into space.
On components of
Yeah,
rockets
yeah,
would go
yeah.
into space. So
Amazing. Right. I'm
Yeah.
ready for liftoff.
let's
I've got
go.
to try and get back out. Right. Wonderful. I've been in a rocket. What a start to the day.
Yeah.
Great. That's brilliant. Okay, where next?
All right, we're just going to head back up to my office.
Okay, great.
And I'll show you some cool things that I have that we've collected, or I've collected over the last year, but also things that I've trained with and some
Now,
like.
you
training
told me
equipment.
yesterday that your office is actually in mission control.
Yeah,
that right?
so we're going to go up to the room that's going to be our first mission control area as we're still building out what will eventually be our firing room. But right now, this is the nervous center and brains of the operation. So,
Excellent.
Yeah,
Lead the
love
way.
to show you all.
This is such a great space.
Oh
isn't it?
yeah, and like we have the world, so always remember.
Always
it's that overview effect that I'm sure we'll hear about more later. But
Yeah,
just seeing the totality of the world, we'll just go right
After you. So when you say we're going to mission control, is that actually where the rockets are going to be launched from?
The rockets themselves are not launched here; they're actually down at the site. But this is where we press the button and get everything going.
Wow.
And all of the mission control and all of those fun things. So,
And this is your desk.
and this is my desk.
Haha. Amazing.
so
All this lovely
welcome.
space stuff.
Yeah, this is
Oh, and this is what you were wearing yesterday in our Q&A.
exactly.
When you
so-
were when you're being an astronaut. Can you hold that up? Let's show
Yeah.
the children who didn't see you yesterday. So what have
So-
we got here? Talk us through it again.
So funny enough, I went to space camp in 2001. Don't date me. And this was the flight suit that I wore back then. And what I love about this one and why I never want to change it is this is what they used to wear on the shuttle program, which inspired me to go to space.
Wow.
So now when I do training or I go out to schools, I try to wear it and share and all that. And I actually got my call sign at space camp when I was 12 years old, 13 years old or so, and they called me Doc, which is funny now with a PhD being Doc.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
it's because my middle initial is a D, and they thought Danger wasn't cool enough, so they said Doc. So yeah, this is the
So this
suit
is your spacesuit.
Yeah.
Amazing. That's great. What else have we
kinda
got
fun.
on here? Show us some more
Yeah.
things.
So some more things is so we can start with the helmet over here.
Can I pick it up?
Go
Is that
for
right?
it.
It's not. Oh wow, it's heavy.
So this is a high altitude helmet, and when I was last training, these were kind of the helmets that we were playing with to just kind of learn how it just sits on your head, closes up, what it feels like to be.
Can I-
Go for it.
Oh wow. Hey,
And
hey.
then,
There
and
you
then
go.
my favorite part of the whole helmet is if you hit this switch here. Oh yeah,
Oh look at that.
proper fighter pilot.
How do I do that? Where's the switch?
The switch is just right. If you come down, right there. So
Oh, my nose is too big. This is great. Built-in
Definitely.
sunglasses, isn't that fabulous?
exactly, and then
Great.
it literally just comes down, and then we close it up, and then kids, we don't have to listen to them anymore.
Wow,
Perfect.
That's amazing. Thank you for letting me wear that. What a treat.
Yeah.
And what
Yeah,
else do
that's-
we have here?
So
Got
I
your spacesuit.
You've got spacesuit. I have my Saturn V Lego rocket, which I love taking around because we can just pick it up, we can drop it, we can break it, but we can just build it back together. But it's a great example of showing how, like rockets here are going to be at least 2 stages. So in that sense, you'll have, if this was the top of the rocket, the bottom will take it to a certain area of wherever our altitude we're looking for, come off, and then this will take you into your final launch altitude that you're at for your
Amazing.
final trajectory. So it's just fun to just play with and talk with, and I get to be just a big kid.
And I can
That's-
see we've got Snoopy as well.
Snoopy.
2 Snoopies.
We got 2 Snoopy. Snoopy has always been a part of the space program with NASA and astronauts, and so I love as just a reminder of what we're here for and what we do. And so I got this Snoopy actually when I was at the Artemis launch working with NASA back earlier this year. And so it's our little astronaut Snoopy, and then
It's like a little mascot.
yeah, a little mascot, or they call them zero-G indicators, which what that is this goes all the way back to the very first launches, is they would have something like Snoopy sitting in the capsule, and they would know that they made it to space if they start seeing it float.
Wow.
So they've had all sorts of different things, but for like the Artemis launch and some of the very first launches that the Americans did, they would have Snoopy in there, and you can see him floating in the background if you watch really carefully. So.
That's brilliant.
Yeah. So we got some fun stuff. We might have, we're talking about patches later, mission patches.
Yeah, some of the children
So-
have been looking at mission patches in school, yeah.
So brought some examples of some mission patches that I have from some groups that I've worked with. Of course, we're going to hear from Sydney and Joan, so that's their mission patch for going to
Great.
space. And then I've got every astronaut. I mean, you're always learning, you're always doing, you always want to grow. And so I have one of my space kind training manuals with me too, which just kind of, you always want to engage and you want to. We're lifelong learners, so
Yeah.
it doesn't matter if you're 8 or if
So
you're.
that's a manual on how to be an astronaut.
That's a manual on how to be an astronaut.
Amazing.
So-
I need a copy of that.
Oh,
Right.
definitely.
We need to let the camera get a little bit closer to this desk so that they can look at some of the things a little closer up. So don't worry if you haven't had a chance to see anything. Where are we going to go next?
Yeah, so this is the exciting part because I know you wanted to see where all the magic happens for actual launch. So I want to take you out to the site. It's just up the road. For safety reasons, we can't be at the same site to launch. You have to be a few kilometers away. So before we do that, if you want to grab a high-vis vest and a hard hat, I'll take you up to site and we'll go see where we actually launch rockets.
Amazing. I will put my coat on as well on the way.
Oh yeah, make sure. Wait 5 minutes and the weather might change 3 times.
Lead the way. I'll find
Perfect.
a coat and we'll put this on and
Let's
we'll
do
see
it.
you outside.
We're just gonna jump in our site jalopy here.
Is this your, oh my word, Saxavord
Saxavord Spaceport.
Look at that.
So the cool thing about this is we reached out to the grandchildren of the original crofter, the farmer who owned land where the launch site is, and they painted it up for us.
This is the grandchildren of the guy where the spaceport is built.
Yeah, where the rockets are taking off, the grandchildren painted this car.
That's really cool.
So-
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Hopefully our camera people will get some close-ups of all of the amazing artwork.
Definitely.
And we're going to go to the launch pad.
We're gonna go to the launch pad. If you want to jump in,
Great, love to.
we'll head up there. Safety first, as always.
Wow, here we are, the most northern part of the British Isles.
We made it. Welcome
We
to
made it.
Saxavord Spaceport.
Saxavord Spaceport. We really are as north as we could get, aren't we?
This is it. I mean, if you look behind us at the operations building, you're north of that. You're the most northern person in the UK right now.
Wow, I'm the most northern person. So what's after me, the North Pole?
The North Pole. And that's why we're up here, because it's a straight shot into the orbits we want to go to. And what we're looking for is going from pole to pole, so going around the Earth. So the further north you can get and the more straight it can be, the cheaper it is to get it up there. Because then it comes down to you need less fuel to get it to there so you can take more payload with you.
So it's about how much you can get up there and the direction that you can launch that rocket.
Exactly.
So if we can get as near to the North Pole as possible, which is we're not that far away, then you can get a good shot.
Exactly.
Amazing, that's great. So here we are. We're going to take a step now onto
Here it is.
the launch pad itself. Here we go.
First step onto
So this
the
is the launch pad.
most northern launch pad in the United Kingdom.
But of course, nothing's launched from here yet.
Nothing has yet. We're still under construction, but as you can see, this gives us an advantage that we can actually go over to the first launch pad that's ready for our first vertical launch later this year.
So this is where the rockets are going to go from?
This is it. Normally this would be in the exclusion zone, so you would not be able to come this close to this, but because it's still construction, we have this unique opportunity that we can actually get under where the rocket's going to be taking off. All that force that's coming down is right here, where we're standing right now.
So you and I are right on. Oh, is that how I can see? Is that why that's? Oh, I see. That's the circle. That's the hole.
Yeah.
Where the rocket's going to be positioned.
Yeah.
So hopefully the cameras can actually see. The rocket's going to come right through here, and then when it takes off, it's going to be all of that propulsion just forced
down
through here.
onto us.
All of that force down to here that makes the rocket go
Newton's
up.
third law is right here in motion, live.
Amazing.
It's just,
and how big are these rockets going to be? Because that's a huge structure above our heads.
yeah, so they're going to get up to 30 meters. That's not saying every rocket's going to be that tall, but that's how high we could get up.
That's
to
like
up here.
higher than the school or
Exactly.
most buildings, I guess.
Yeah, some of the buildings in some of your kids' own hometowns are probably not as tall as some of these rockets, but you need that in order to get even further into space.
That's amazing. So we've brought you all the way to the Shetland Isles, to the very most northern point, to show you what's going to happen right here underneath. But you've got an experiment for us, haven't you?
I do.
Right
I have
here.
something amazing for us to see. So going back, like we were talking about, all that force coming down, going towards Newton's third law, that's what rockets are all about. But you know, to get there, you know, Newton's first law is something can keep moving if nothing acts on it. So think about when we're hearing from the astronauts about they're floating in space until something stops them, they'll just float on forever.
Right.
Or you have the second where you need that force. If you're an object, you need something greater to push on you. So think of the wind coming right here. That's not enough force to knock you over, but if I go push on you, you're gonna move. So that's your second law. Now we're looking at the third law, which is that opposite force and the reaction and pushing with the acceleration up and the force coming down in order to propel the rocket up. So
okay.
kind of like, you know, little rocket.
Which
So-
you always just carry around
yeah,
with you.
you know, always have a little rocket with you. But basically, you're looking at, as you're launching up, you've got the downward force against gravity pushing up. And that's what we're trying to do, is we're basically just beating gravity to get into that orbit and then getting the speed. And then we're heading towards the north, and then we'll be going around.
So essentially, the force going that way means that
Acceleration
things go
going
that
up,
way.
Yeah.
Right, so that's what our experiment is about. I saw this when we got out the car.
Oh yes, have a lovely experiment for you. And what's really cool about this is I love rockets. I mean, like you said, carrying around a rocket. And what's cool, like with the Artemis rocket, is it was powered by oxygen and hydrogen, which when you put it together is water. So I always love making water rockets because it reminds me of like where the big rockets go. So this is Newton's third law in action. And what we're going to be doing here is we have a pump, and we're going to be filling up the rocket here with air and building the pressure up. And you'll see as we're building that the bottle goes from squishy to being really hard, and that's all that air holding in. That then eventually we're going to release, and it should shoot straight up.
So if I was to lift this off now, the water would just trickle out because there's not that much pressure to really set the bottle off like a rocket. But if we
Exactly.
increase that air pressure in the bottle here, then the push down, the force down onto the liquid, when we pull the pin, should hopefully set it off like a rocket.
Exactly.
Amazing.
And that's because it's all pushing down and it's pushed in, it should shoot straight up. Well, with the wind.
With the wind, yeah.
It might end up in England. But at this rate, yeah, it should shoot straight up.
And the chain, that's not part of the experiment. That's to
Chain's
stop
nothing,
everything
yeah.
blowing away.
Chain is because we have such high winds.
Okay.
We might blow away.
Oh, right. So
We'll allow you the honors of pumping this up.
I knew that was coming. It was going to be my job. You can see the air going straight in and
Yeah.
through the water.
So
Okay.
if we look at this, think of it like when you see a bottle in the shop, you've got the pressure on here, and as you can see, it's getting tighter and tighter. Make sure if you do this at home or with your school, you don't stand over it because you might have it pop up on you. But as we can see here, the pressure is building, and as you keep pumping, we keep adding more pressure into here.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's rock hard, isn't it? There's a real force down
yeah,
on the
maybe
liquid
give it
now.
just a couple more, and I think we'll be perfect.
Okay, well, as this is going to be the very first launch from Saxaboard,
Yeah.
I think it should be you.
Oh, really?
Come on, yeah, of course.
Okay.
You've got to get the launch pin out, and then we're
So-
going to set this rocket off. The first rocket from the launch pad here. And obviously, Mason's going to need a countdown. So wherever you are in the world, I want you to do a 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 with me. Are you ready? As loud as you can. I want to hear you here in the Shetlands. So with me, here we go. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Lift off! Oh my word!
Yes!
Amazing!
The first vertical launch.
First vertical launch from the Shetlands here at Saxaboard.
Saxaboard.
And you were the person who set it off. That's amazing.
Oh,
With
it's amazing.
over 100,000 children from all over the world.
So
watching
cool.
as
Thank
well.
you all for joining us for this monument.
And probably the biggest liftoff, the biggest countdown, I should say,
Yeah.
that we've ever had.
The largest
So many
countdown.
people giving you that countdown. Right, so I've just been told that we can do a slow motion. So if we give our people behind the cameras a few seconds, they're going to get us a slow motion of that as well. And we can watch it on our monitor here.
Perfect.
So if we just wait. Sorry everyone, this is live TV. Give us a second. Okay. Hurry up. Okay, here we go. So we've got our, so this is a slow motion replay now. So there we go. This is where the pin comes out.
Yeah.
Oh, and
see
you
it
can
coming
see
out.
that. You can see that water coming out there.
That's all that force pushing down through that little nozzle there, pushing the water out, which is causing the rocket to just propel straight up. That's
Right.
pure third law.
You can see all of that force there. There's the water blasting out. That's amazing. Okay, fabulous. Now,
Yeah.
we're going to go back to headquarters in the car. We're freezing cold. Our fingers are numb. But I've got another question for you. What I'd like you to think about in your classes now, why do we do it? Why do we send rockets and satellites into space? What's the purpose of a satellite? What can it do? How do we use them? And why is it so important that Mason and his team get these satellites up into orbit above the planet Earth? We're going to go back to headquarters. We'll catch you back there. Bye-bye. So we're back in headquarters,
Oh, yeah.
and it's a lot warmer here than out there. It's certainly wet and windy.
Definitely.
But we launched the rocket.
We did.
We launched the rocket.
First launch from Saxaboard.
Pretty cool.
yeah.
Now, before we came back, we asked you to think about why do we have satellites? What do they do? What is their purpose? And there's no one better to tell us. And actually, we've got a picture of a satellite here.
Yeah.
So what are we looking at here, Mason?
Yeah, so this is most likely bigger than anything we're going to be launching from this site, but it's a good illustration of satellites in orbiting Earth. So this is Europe below us. So you've got Italy coming in here, you have France, you have Spain, North Africa, Turkey into Asia. And this is what an astronaut would see if they're floating above space.
That's amazing. It all looks so small when you're that far away, doesn't it? That's the whole
Yeah.
of Italy just there.
It's the whole.
Amazing. So these satellites, this satellite, for example, is up there. What sort of jobs would a satellite be doing?
Yeah, so you might not think about it, but when you're in your car and you use sat-nav, that's satellite communication to find your location on the Earth. Or if you're playing your Xbox or your PlayStation and it's through the internet, you might think that you're plugging it in and that's it. But that signal then transfers into a receiver that then will go to a satellite to connect you with, say, a kid on the other side of the Earth playing with you. Or one that I always like to talk about is, I don't know if many of you watch the World Cup, but you're over here and the game's being played, that signal is being beamed up to a satellite and then quicker than you can blink your eye, it's back down into the UK, and you're watching that game with almost instantaneously
It's
as
that
it's being
fast.
played. Exactly. I mean, even it can go as far as like, say if you have an Alexa or some of those smart devices or one of those rings that you push the button and you see the camera come up. If you're getting that on your mobile phone, it's gone through a satellite to get to you. So you could be on the other side of the world, someone rings your doorbell, it comes up on your phone, you see who it is. That's through a satellite that you're seeing that.
That is amazing. So if you've got a Ring doorbell at home tonight and you go home and you press that and you know that can be sent to a mobile device, then you've just connected with a satellite. That is pretty cool, isn't it? So somebody here in their car with their sat nav on, somebody here watching a football match from another part of the world, somebody on their PlayStation, somebody on a device like their telephone or their iPad, all of those connections are going up out of their house, out of the Earth's atmosphere, up into a satellite and then back to somewhere else.
Back down, yeah.
That is amazing.
And it's a lot quicker to go up and down than it is to do a straight line connection through.
Of course, that makes perfect sense now. What other uses are you using here at Saxavoord? What are you using satellites for here?
Yeah, so satellites here at Saxavoord are primarily focused on two things. One is environmental monitoring, and the other is telecommunications. And where we're at, like we talked about at the site, with being so far north and going in that kind of orbit around the poles, is that allows satellites to be at the same location at the same time of day all the time. So if you're looking at environmental change, say it was the natural disasters that happened in Aberdeen last year with the weather blowing a lot of trees down, instead of hiring a lot of people to come out, have helicopters, survey, take photos and all that, we can take an image from space of a couple days before, a couple days after, and we can survey right there, just in a matter of minutes, how bad the deforestation was in a region as opposed to all the manpower that you would need over time. But likewise, when it comes to Shetland and the islands, is we're able to look at, say, salmon farms and the green algae that's growing in the waters, or runoff pollution, or how those environmental changes are happening that you can do instantaneously.
So when we talk about environmental change in our homes and we do our bit for the environment and to reduce carbon emissions or waste, and we recycle and things, we're all doing things in our homes and in our schools. But you and your team are using satellites to do the same thing but in space and to have a positive impact on the environment.
Exactly, and some people even think that, all right, you're launching rockets up and that's gonna be bad on the environment. But in actuality, a lot of times that propellant, as we talked about at the launch site, is hydrogen and oxygen, so that's just water vapor. And now when you get into space junk and things that are up there, we're even working with a group out of Edinburgh that's building wooden satellites. So then when it does its few passes and its life cycle's done, it'll just come back to Earth, completely burn up, and there'll be no debris left behind or no space junk left behind. So we're thinking of the entire life cycle of the sustainability, which I'm sure we'll hear more about a little bit later.
Well, we are, because I think we're going to go to your office now and we're going to meet another special guest, a lady called Elizabeth, who's one of your colleagues, and she's going to talk to us a little bit about that very important word, sustainability. But before we go and meet her, there is somebody very special that we'd like you to have a video.
Hello and welcome to everyone in Key Stage 2. I hope you're enjoying the live lesson from Saxavoord Spaceport. I'm Helen Sharman, the UK's first astronaut, and I'm really excited to see the spaceport begin launching later this year. I'm sure you all have some really good questions about rockets and satellites, so don't forget to send them in so Mason and the team at Saxavoord can hopefully answer them for you.
Back in Mason's office here at Mission Control, but this time we're with Elizabeth. Now, Elizabeth, does your office look like this? That's the question on everyone's lips. Have you got rockets on your desk too?
I haven't got rockets on my desk. I have two desks because I'm up on site quite often, and no, I don't have all of this on my desk at all.
But your desk is up at the actual launch pad area where we've just been.
Well, I have two desks. I have a desk down here on the main site and then up at the launch site as well.
Now, I believe, talking of being important, I believe a very important role that you are involved with is sustainability here at Saxavord. Now, sustainability, of course, being all about looking after the environment, making sure that as this project progresses, we're not depleting resources or damaging the environment, so that this is a sustainable project. So can you tell us a little bit about sustainability here at Saxavord and what you're doing as an organisation?
Yes, at Saxavord we're very aware of the need to be sustainable, both on an environmental aspect and a social aspect as well. And as you can imagine, prior to starting to build the spaceport, we had to go through all sorts of environmental studies to ensure that we weren't going to disturb anything on the site too much.
So I see. So you get you get all your data before you start, so you know what you started with, and then you monitor it as the project progresses to see the impact.
That's correct.
Amazing, great.
That's correct.
Now I've heard, Elizabeth, that you are from the Shetland Islands yourself, born and bred.
Yes, born and bred in Shetland. I've lived and worked in Shetland most of my life, but I have travelled quite extensively during the last 20 odd years for business.
So actually protecting this environment for the next generation is very important to you personally as well.
It's very important to me personally to protect the environment, but it's important to every Shetlander. We all want to ensure that our islands are economically viable, but also that everything that lives and grows on our islands are protected.
Now, we've been taking questions from the children throughout the lesson today, and I've been told that some of the questions that have been coming in are how loud this rocket is going to be, or the rockets will be when they launch from the Shetland Islands. And I guess that links to sustainability, because it is a kind of pollution, noise pollution, isn't it? Is it going to be very loud? Is it going to disturb wildlife or even just people in their homes?
In years gone by, this was an operational RAF station, and we had a warning signal that sounded out at 2 o'clock every day, and that could be heard across the whole island. So
really?
it's nothing new. It's nothing new to us on this island, and obviously during the planning for this spaceport, we've done noise assessments, and we've done all sorts of studies to look at the noise and the likelihood of disturbance of wildlife. And at the moment, we're restricted to times out with the bird breeding season for launches until we understand more about how a launch and any noise associated would affect these.
So at the moment you wouldn't do any launches around where the birds are breeding at that time of year?
Well, yes, we're restricted. In fact, a funny story I can tell you about bird breeding season is we have eider ducks that bred on the site for the first time this year during construction phase. They hadn't bred for the last, I don't know, decade at least. And we think the reason for that was because they felt safe with all the machinery around them from the bigger birds that such as bonxies that were attacking their young. So, and the big burly construction workers noticed them before the ornithologists noticed them, and they put a Harris fence around them immediately. They were really protecting the wildlife.
So it could actually be that there are elements of the environment that this work that you're doing and this project in general is not only doing great things in space to help the environment, but also right down here on the Shetland Islands.
That's correct.
That's amazing. Elizabeth, it's been an absolute pleasure to meet you. We've had an amazing day so far. This live lesson has been so exciting for us all. We're going to have a quick recap of what we've done so far, and we're going to get Mason back in here, and we're going to do some Q&As, some questions and answers from you. Well, Key Stage 2, what an amazing day we've had here in the Shetland Islands, together exploring the Saxavord spaceport. Let's have a little recap of what we've done today. Well, we arrived here and we met Mason, who gave us a tour of Mission Control. We saw the rocket that was made by the children on the island, and we learned how Saxavord uses the space that they have to work with the community and schools. Then we went to Mason's office. What a great desk he's got with all of that space, memorabilia and artifacts for us to explore and learn from. Car with all that incredible artwork that was painted by the grandchildren of the people who originally owned the land where the spaceport is built. And then we went round the corner and we went to the launch pad, and that's where the first ever rocket took off from the newest launch pad in the British Isles. Then we asked you why we have satellites, what is their purpose? And Mason told us how they use satellites for so many important things that we take for granted every day. And then Key Stage 2, we got a very special message from a very special lady. Helen Sharman, Britain's first ever astronaut, sent you a video link to wish you good luck with your live lesson. Then we met Elizabeth, another of Mason's colleagues. She's in charge of sustainability, and we learnt about the important work that Saxavord is doing to look after the environment and protect the Shetland Islands for future generations. What a busy day. It's time now for your questions and answers to Elizabeth and to Mason. What a busy lesson we've had. We've done so much in the last hour, and thanks so much to Mason and Elizabeth for being part of our lesson. And thanks so much to you for all of your fabulous questions that have been coming in throughout the lesson. There is no way I'm going to get through all these questions in the next 10 minutes, but thank you so much. And do listen out, because although it might not be your question, you might find that it's been answered anyway. So the first question actually is a very easy one. Did you get the bottle back? Yes, we did. We didn't go running after it. We're far too busy, but we did get the bottle back. Somebody ran over and got it. It didn't go that far. It went up a long way, and the wind caught it, but we managed to get it back, so don't worry. Now then, I've got a school I'm going to struggle to pronounce, but I'll do my best. Dosbarth Llywelyn. I hope I've pronounced that correctly. I'm guessing they're in Wales. Why have you chosen Scotland to launch your rockets? And another question further down from Caitlin says, have any rockets previously been launched from Scotland? So we'll put those two together from Caitlin and Dosbarth Llywelyn.
Yeah, so as we discussed earlier, it's about location, location, location. So for us up here in Unst, it's the further north you can get in the UK, the less fuel you need, the more payload you can take up to those altitudes and those orbits to start going around the Earth. And that becomes really important when we're looking at cost of getting satellites up. And as we saw earlier today, that was the first launch from a launch pad here in Saxavord, and we've never launched a rocket in Scotland before. So we all today witnessed history in the making. But it does come back to that we're launching so far north because of just taking advantage of that opportunity that the geography gives us.
So yeah, basically, by getting as far north as we can, and you can't get any further north than where we are right now, we're nearer to the North Pole. That's basically what it comes down to for why we're here, isn't it?
Yeah.
Amazing. Great. Okay, I have a question from Moorland Primary in Splot in Cardiff with Mrs. Bailey and Mrs. Allen from Poplar and Ash class, and they've got a question for you. And I should have warned you about this one first, I think. Can Elizabeth tell us how loud a rocket is in decibels? I guess they're doing something on sound in their class.
Well, yes. A rocket is actually, if you're standing right beneath it, it would be about 130 decibels.
Okay.
But everybody has to stay out with the exclusion zone, so it's about 100 decibels. So if you're right at the rocket, it'd be like a large plane taking off. But at 100 decibels, that's like a loud motorbike sound. And the interesting thing is it takes the rocket a minute to get up to 60,000 feet. And so you hear the noise for a minute, and then you hear it for a further minute because it takes a minute for the noise to come back down again. So you hear the sound traveling. So that's interesting. So it's a couple of minutes of like the equivalent of maybe a motorbike going past.
That's not too loud then. That's not too loud at all. Okay, I have a question here from another tricky pronunciation. I do apologise if I get it wrong. Trey Ushaf, Year 5. Who designs the rockets that you're sending up into space?
So for us here at Saxavord, it's the various rocket companies that are actually coming to launch with us. So we don't design the rockets, but we provide the facilities, kind of like an airport, if you will. Just instead of flying to, say, America, you're flying to outer space. So it's the individual companies that are designing rockets, and one of them is right here in Scotland, Skyrora. And so we'll have a Scottish-made rocket that launches from Scotland using fuels created in Scotland.
Amazing. Well, I have another question from Theodore that says, what things do you need to prepare to go inside the rocket? So I suppose that's linked, isn't it? Theodore's asking what goes inside it.
Yeah, so
It's not people, is it?
It's
We're not
not
sending
people, no.
just to be clear.
And the UK is not at the point where we're even going to do launches of people from the UK. But what we do is we're providing a clean room that then you put your satellites into the rocket, and then once you get it to the pad, you're going to put your fuel in, and then once you have the fuel and everything's ready to go, you have your satellite, your fuel, then it's press the button, or as we saw earlier, pull the cord, and it's just...
Okay, amazing. Right, so, right. Okay, I've got a question here for Elizabeth from Park Primary. It's not very sciencey, but it's a good question nevertheless. Why does Elizabeth like living there if it's so cold and windy on the island? It's a good question, and it's a question I've been wondering.
Well, fortunately, it's not cold and windy all the time, and because we do have cold and wind, we really appreciate the fine days. It's a really nice place to live and work and bring up kids. It's very safe, it's very secure, there's a real community spirit on the island.
And would you recommend a visit if the children and their families are thinking of visiting the Shetland Islands?
Yes, they would be made very welcome on the island, and there's plenty of activities for kids. People often say, well, what do you do on an island? But there's more activities than you would think, and it keeps us going during the long winter nights.
The long winter nights, indeed. It gets dark very early here at this time of year, I can tell you that. Okay, next question. Oh, this comes back to you again, Elizabeth. Sorry, Mason. This is from Dion Seagrove, and she says, how do you reduce the carbon footprint of a journey in a rocket? Now, I know we've covered that a little bit, so just to recap for us, because I think it is very important, how do you do that?
Well, you look at what you can do to save carbon in other ways, such as peat restoration plans we have, and we have planting of trees and flowers, and of course we're trying to use as much renewable energy as possible, both at the launch site and at the domestic site here as well. So we're looking at every opportunity to become more sustainable on the project.
Excellent, good. That's always good to hear, as we talked about before as well. Another question here. I think this one's got to come to you. Can you show us the patches again, please? The mission patches. I know that we saw them briefly on your desk. We do have them here. Can you show us them and talk us through a little bit about them, maybe?
Yeah, just a couple of the patches. I have some historical ones from like the Mercury and Gemini program with Gus Grissom. And a fun little story about that, when Gus went up in Mercury 4, his capsule sunk.
Can we hold it up?
Yeah, his capsule sunk. And so when he went up in...
Okay, I'm gonna, this is live TV, everybody, it's live TV. We're gonna go to that camera there, and we're gonna try and zoom in a little bit. Are we getting that?
So his Mercury 4, his capsule sunk when he left. So when he went up again a few years later in Gemini program, he called it the Molly Brown because it was the unsinkable Molly Brown from Titanic.
Ah, wow.
So a fun play on words. But then when you get into patches, like a couple of my friends who are going to space, Joan and Sydney, and of course Mike Mongo, Papa Pow. This is their mission patch for when they go. And then one of my absolute favorite ones is a group I'm a part of called the Inspired 24, which are basically just space explorers and enthusiasts. And the key when you're designing mission patches, especially if you're going to do it in your classroom or something, is find that story of who you are and what you're about. So there was 24 of us who started the organization, so there's 24 stars. And then just the inspiration of looking to the stars and making sure that in that case we want to make access to all. So you see those different kinds of patches. Last one, I know we're short on time.
No, we're okay.
This is one that ULA, which is United Launch Alliance, did for the Artemis launch. And so you'll have patches that are mission patches, like the first three I showed you, organizations that you're working with, leadership groups, and then you'll have some that are just the companies that work on the components or parts of a rocket. So this was for the capsule and the part that went around the moon for the Artemis launch. And this was where they designed that aspect. So they made a special patch just for that part of one mission. So patches can be the crew, they can be the entire mission, or just a piece of a mission.
Amazing. One of the activities that we've encouraged people to do is to look at your own school mission patch, maybe for a project you're doing or for your school, because mission patches bring in so much information, the people involved, the objectives of the project. So teachers, if you're listening, it's a really, really good project to do with your class. And if you go on YouTube and you look for NASA mission patch, there's a really child-friendly video there all about mission patches, going way back in time, and you meet the artists who've designed them, the astronauts who've influenced them, and the projects that they've been designed for. It's a really good YouTube video, and it's a great starter to a lesson on mission patches, which is a great art activity too. So just a little aside there. I've got 2 questions I'm going to finish with. One's a fun one, one's a bit more serious. What advice would you both give to children who want to work either involved in space or as an astronaut themselves?
Yeah, for me, it's just be the best you can be at what you love to do. So it doesn't matter if you want to be a mathematician or an engineer or work in science or technology, or if you want to be an artist or a musician or a farmer or a plumber. As long as you try to be the best version of that and your best self, there's going to be opportunities in the future in space.
And Elizabeth?
Well, having 4 kids myself, I would say, and I always encourage them to just do your best. Reach for the stars. You never know what's ahead of you. If a door opens, go through it, see what's there. And every single kid is good at something. And so put your best foot forward and do your best, and you never know where you'll end up. I'm a grandmother project managing the build of a spaceport. Who knew?
That's brilliant. A grandma building a spaceport. Well, good for you, good for everybody here. It's a really strong team, really great people. And you've been an inspiration to me and hopefully to all the children at home and at school as well. The last question has come in, and it's only one person who's asked for it, so it's not something that's come to thousands, but can we see Mason in the helmet?
Oh. All right. So this is just like what I trained with.
I want to see if it hits your nose as well, because mine's still sore from before. I'm not joking. It does hit your nose as well. It's
Hits
not
the
just
nose.
me. Brilliant. There we go.
Oh, it's so much fun.
Excellent. I'm going to do it to you because you did it to me. Ready? Brace yourself.
Yeah.
Great. Children, it's been an absolute pleasure having you along from all over the world in today's live lesson here from Saxavord Spaceport in the Shetland Islands. Thank you so much to Elizabeth and to Mason and to all the team, the people that you haven't seen who've been here to make this happen today. You saw the very first rocket launch from the spaceport. There are other lessons as well. Today we've done Key Stage 1 this morning, we've done Key Stage 2 just now. Yesterday we had the Q&A with Helen Sharman and Mason, and there are loads more lessons for you to join as well. If you go to stemlive.co.uk, you can sign up. We've got over 25, 30 lessons all through the rest of 2023. So get on board, go onto the website and get signed up today, because we've got some really fabulous lessons coming your way. That's it from us here on the Shetland Islands. Have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye-bye.
Bye.